we screwed it up for probably the first 4 months of being remote. We really had a great culture internally with everybody coming into an office. We had that Google type office with lofts and hammocks and beanbag chairs and all the cool things. So culture was amazing. We had an office where people wanted to be and wanted to hang out. It took a lot of intentionality to keep that culture. And we probably did a bad job the first 4 months figuring it out. I think accountability is huge in a remote culture. And what we learned is that in an office, we discount the conversation that we're able to have. We really take it for granted. And that's got to be far more intentional in a remote environment, because the majority of things from a communication standpoint are happening via Slack with our team versus being able to just walk over to somebody's desk and have a conversation. So I think the biggest hurdle for us was, how do we take this really cool team family culture that we built and be able to keep it together when we're thousands of miles apart in every different direction?
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
You think about your culture and how that changes through the remote environments that we have to have today. Well, we're going to dive into that in this episode. We have with us a very special guest. He is the founder, CEO of Disrupt Media Group. They were been multiple times on the Inc. list. We're talking with Ryan Thogmartin, and Ryan and I discuss how he keeps culture the way he wants it, how he intentionally is about it. He will talk about his 2 daily stand-up meetings. Yes, you heard me right. 2. He found that was the right rhythm. And we go through the details of unpacking what that is. But I just wanted you to know that today we're going to be looking at remote culture and what you can do to lead people to keep it strong and keep people working effectively and reaching your goals. My job is to help you become the best leader you can be. Now, inside of that, we know that you've got to trust your people. And trusting your people means you've got to empower them. And you've got to make sure they also have the right training for any management and leadership responsibilities they have to undergo. You have probably gotten a lot of experience and you have a huge network of people, most CEOs do, that they can lean on to get insight from and wisdom. But inside employees don't really have that. So we've created something really special. It's a leadership development offer called Leadership On-Ramp. And it really is about taking your top talent and turning them into effective leaders. If you want to get a game plan, we'll sit down with you and see where you are right now, what is missing inside of creating a company that has empowered people. People are really strong leaders, and frankly, making leadership a competitive advantage for your company. All you have to do is go to genehammett.com and schedule a call. Now, when you think about all the things that you have going on, this call probably is far down the list. And I say this bluntly, you want to take the time to actually think these things through, be intentional about how you're developing your class of talented people, how leadership is really impacting the organization. And if it was taken up to a few notches, if you had people that were really leading powerfully, what would happen in your business? How much could you grow it? Well, inside that call, we'll have that chat. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule the call. Now, here's Ryan. Ryan, how are you?
Fantastic, Gene. Thanks for having me on.
Well, excited to have you as a guest on the podcast. Before we jump into our core topic today, tell us a little bit about your company, Disrupt Media Group.
Yeah, I'm just an entrepreneur at heart and a marketer. I love connecting people and having impact on businesses. And so social media and being a marketing agency was the way to do it. And we found a nice little niche that we're passionate about, which is the death care space. So funeral homes, cemeteries, crematories, pet cremation businesses, really any brand that operates and sells in death care to a funeral home or to the consumer is where we really hang our hat. We operate 5 different brands kind of under that umbrella, but Disrupt is our large social media agency.
I've got to ask you, I mean, and we can get into the specifics of the industry, but a lot of people looked at the changes of social media. They can't really decide how to engage. What do you wish people knew about social media that they don't know?
The social media is exactly what a handshake is in real life. I mean, Facebook exists and social media exists because it plays off the natural tendencies that we have as human beings to want to be in relationship and be in community with like-minded people. And I think that we look at social as this completely different animal when it's really the day-to-day interaction and handshake in a new shiny box. It's that basic.
Well, we're going to dive into our core topic today. We've all been through a lot going on with remote working. I don't think that's going to change. I would imagine your company probably was remote from the beginning. Is that fair to say?
We actually had 30 people in an office in a small town in Ohio because our mission was to change the culture of that city from the inside out, being able to build a company where people wanted to be that could change culture. And we started to be able to do that. COVID did force us remote, but it's opened up a lot of new hurdles, but also new opportunities. So now all 30 of our employees are remote all across the country and even international.
Well, let's talk about what you've seen of how to keep culture with remote work.
Oh boy, we screwed it up for probably the first 4 months of being remote. We really had a great culture internally with everybody coming into an office. We had that Google type office with lofts and hammocks and beanbag chairs and all the cool things. So culture was amazing. We had an office where people wanted to be and wanted to hang out. It took a lot of intentionality to keep that culture. And we probably did a bad job the first 4 months figuring it out. I think accountability is huge in a remote culture. And what we learned is that in an office, we discount the conversation that we're able to have. We really take it for granted, and that's got to be far more intentional in a remote environment because the majority of things from a communication standpoint are happening via Slack with our team versus being able to just walk over to somebody's desk and have a conversation. So I think the biggest hurdle for us was how do we take this really cool team family culture that we built and be able to keep it together when we're thousands of miles apart in every different direction. And that was tough.
So let's dive into how you do that. Like, what are the core elements that keeps the culture the way you want it to?
One, we had to have a clear defined mission with our leadership team and our executive team around the culture that we wanted to keep virtually. And what did that look like? So we had to give, from a leadership perspective, I had to give managers and executive team freedom to be able to understand what would work best for their team, whether that is a daily check-in meeting, whether that's multiple check-in meetings. We've been very intentional with company-wide all-hands meetings. We have 2 all-hands meetings every day, one at 10 a.m. Eastern, one at 4 p.m. Eastern. So beginning of the day, end of the day, just check-ins. Sometimes those are 30 seconds. Sometimes they're 10 or 15 minutes if there's things and issues that need to be discussed. We wrote personal development into that. We've done things like virtual escape rooms and those all hands meetings that get, again, creating opportunity for team. We'll do different whiteboard breakout rooms where we're creating content, sharing that content back in a group setting just to keep motors turning and wheels turning. But it took a lot of intentionality with our leadership team to, one, give them the freedom to understand their teams and how their teams would communicate best. And then also, how do we incorporate that into the company as a whole? And from a leadership perspective, we had to set a lot of boundaries and a lot of defined expectations, what culture looked like virtually.
I know there's someone listening in here going, 2 all-hand meetings a day.
Yeah.
We can't even get one together. Did you guys just start with this, or did you find
Yes.
this rhythm that worked for you?
No, we started with one. And, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was those meetings were taking an hour. That one all hands meeting in the morning was taking an hour because with the clientele that we have across the country, there were different we were creating a lot of different type of content for regulations and things. And there were a lot of legalities that had to be discussed in those meetings. So we immediately started with one all hands meeting. And we found that there were conversations that needed to happen throughout the day. And there was not a process for how to get my attention to have some of those conversations. We were all treading new ground through the midst of this. So the team is going, hey, what do we do? And we didn't have a check-in process to make that happen. And that's where the second all hands meeting towards the end of the day came into play. Our HR department and managers did a great job with operations to put processes in place. And it was an evolving routine. Every day was different, I would say, for the first few months. But once we really got dialed in to the value of those meetings, they went from 45 minutes to 10 minutes to now literally sometimes it's just a quick check-in. Everybody good? Yes. Anything come up? No. Cool. Have a great evening. And we bounce off. But we started with one all hands meeting and that evolved to two, but we had to put caps on them because it's easy to spend 30 minutes that gets wasted. So, we have a point for every meeting now. Our manager team and HR team do a great job to make sure that from an operations standpoint, there's value and nuggets that can come from each one of those meetings, even if it is a 30-second check-in. There's always a takeaway that can be applied.
Now, hold on for a second. Ryan just talked about the value of meetings. Now, I've heard a lot of people say we have too many meetings. And if that's the case, then you want to make sure that you are being really intentional about providing value inside the meetings. Elon Musk is very famous for saying that he gives people an excuse or will excuse people if they don't find that the meeting is valuable. It's your job to make sure the meeting is valuable. And you don't want people walking away from the meeting going, we could have just done that in an email, or we could have done that some other way. We wasted our time. You want to make sure you're intentional about how you structure those meetings, bringing the agenda, bringing up, keeping things on track, and really serving them powerfully. Make them as short as you can so that people are able to get what they need to and get back out. There are times for longer meetings, but most of the meetings that we've been talking about are really about checking in with people and seeing where they are and removing roadblocks. Those can be done in very short meetings, and it just helps to know that they're available to you. And that's what I wanted to bring up here today. Now, let's get back to Ryan. I appreciate you explaining that to us, Ryan. You mentioned something earlier that I want to go back to. One of the core things that keeps the culture the way you want to is accountability. What do we see across your organization to let us know that you're holding people accountable and to what they're doing?
Boundaries was one. I'm a very hands-off, not a micromanager. And so from a structure standpoint, I didn't like rules. I didn't like processes. I don't think that way. I'm very big vision, typical visionary CEO. Like that's the role that I play. And I had to learn that teams function better when they know what the boundaries are. So think of playing football on a field with no out of bounds and no in lines. It would be completely chaos. Nobody knows the direction of where they're supposed to go and how to get there. So by creating structure and creating boundaries and expectations, it really opened up the ability for our team to thrive. And that's the thing that I learned the most through this was that people want structure. They want freedom, but structure provides them more freedom because now they know the boundaries that they can play in and what the expectations are. And when those things aren't clearly defined, it can be chaos. They don't really know what they're going after. And so, that was one of the things that I had to learn. And it was easier in an office because I was present every day and could have conversations. When everybody's remote, processes need to change. And our leadership team did a really good job of listening to the employee and understanding what their needs were. They really became the core customer, was serving them with the right expectations so they could serve our clients better.
So you mentioned boundaries. Give us an example of the boundaries you're talking about with your team.
Yeah, so boundaries are expectations on deadlines. I mean, just basic things like that. Processes of how content goes from, an account manager to the graphics team, to the content team, back to the account manager. I would approach it like, oh, you guys are adults within your team, figure it out. Well, that doesn't hold anybody accountable because then now every team's doing it a little bit different. And what we did is we allowed each team to create their own process. We evaluated it over a 30-day period. We looked at efficiency in each one of those processes, and our operations team really determined what the most efficient process was, and everybody had to adapt to that. And I've learned that enforcing those processes and putting expectations out there, I would say, hey, we need to do this. And the team would go, great. And we'd exit a meeting, and then it would never get done because there was nobody checking in. There was nobody giving a deadline. And so, simple deadlines of I need this by 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Also, corrective actions. Like when processes aren't followed, there has to be accountability there. And corrective actions is, a write-up is one of those ways. We also put in systems that rewarded people for following the process, where, efficiency teams are getting rewarded, speed teams are getting rewarded, minimization of mistakes teams are getting rewarded. So now everybody takes accountability over their specific role because it impacts the entire team. And it really took a lot of intentionality around that, and boundaries plays into it. So just setting simple deadlines, guidelines, rules, processes. I looked at those things as shackles, where the team looked at those things as freedom because, okay, now I know what the expectation is and I know where my skill set lies in this process.
When you think about leading a remote work culture and keeping the culture the way you want to, what did you had to shift in your own leadership?
That I didn't have to be the best person at every little thing. So one of the things that held us back, even when we were not remote, we were internal, was my thought process as an entrepreneur that I needed to know how to do every little thing and that I had to be the best at everything. So I resisted hiring an operations COO. I resisted hiring HR because I felt like that's a skill set as an entrepreneur that I should have had on the process side. And what I realized is I don't have to be the best at everything. I have to be the best at what I do the best that can serve the company most efficiently and find the other people that can be the best at those responsibilities. Steve Jobs didn't create every single aspect of the iPhone. He was the visionary, but he had the right designers and the right technicians and the right engineers to be able to create what it was, and the right developers to be able to build the right software. There were people that were better at a skill set than he was to do those jobs. I serve the company best when I'm in the visionary role on vision of where we're going and how we're going to make the money. When I started putting the right people in place to add the skill sets that I didn't have is when we really started to grow. So from a remote culture, still plugging in those people, I'm not somebody that's going to be on 2 all hands meetings every day. It's just not going to happen. Like my time is on a lot of other things to grow the business. So I can't be on those all hands meetings every day, but I can have a point person that's their responsibility to lead those all hands meetings that answers directly to me. So the culture that I vision is still getting put into place. So I had to learn to delegate better. And hire the right people for a specific skill set versus focusing on, hey, you need to get better at that. Let us get you training on how to get better at this. When they're going, I don't really love this part of the job, but I really love this part. Great. Let's put you in this role where you only do that thing that you really love. I had to find the ability to hire those people and understand that delegating was a form of great leadership.
Now, Ryan just talked about I serve best as a visionary. Now, I think a lot of people out there can probably relate to that. I know I can relate to it, but I'm also in the business because I'm the executive coach of the company. No one else is doing that right now. We have leadership coaches in other areas, but I still do founders and CEOs. Now, I bring all this up because in order for you to truly be the visionary, you've got to trust the people around you. You've got to empower them to make decisions and even fail. You got to be okay with that. And I really believe that this is a part of entrepreneurial growth that has happened for us founders and CEOs, but it also can be pushed down to other levels. And so if you want to truly step into the visionary on a more consistent basis, then you've got to trust those around you. You've got to empower them powerfully, and you've got to be the leader that they deserve. Now back to Ryan. I love the way you break these things down. When you think about leadership moving forward, do you see it changing for you in the company?
I think that it's always evolving. There's still things that trip me up. There's still new situations that present themselves. I think as a leader, when I look at what you're creating with this podcast, the value of being connected to so many other leaders and in the right rooms is that regardless of what happens going forward, I don't always have to solve my own problem. And what I mean by that is creating a network of other leaders that have experienced that same issue, where now I've got a sounding board. And I think that's the power of networking, is that you can create relationships with people where any problem that I have, anything that I haven't faced before as a leader, I've got other people in my network that I can tap that are different places than where I'm at, that have experienced that same thing and can give me feedback. And I think that's one of the most valuable things as we've grown, is having the right people in my corner that can be sounding boards, that have experienced the things that we're going through from a growing pain standpoint, or scaling, or hiring remote workers. I had friends that had companies that were remote from the jump that could feed into our executive team and things to be aware of. So I think the power of a leader is also having a great network where you don't have to solve your own problems. There's somebody that's already there, that's done that and going where you want to go, or they're already there. So I see it evolving, but I don't know what that evolution looks like. I know that I continually have to sharpen my skill set, and I also have to be insanely aware of what I'm not good at and getting people for those roles. We've worked really hard over the last 2 years of kind of firing me from every role in the company that I had and replacing me with people that they have that specific skill set so I can live 100% in what I do best. And that's the visionary side and how we're going to continue to grow and what we're going to offer to the marketplace. I've got the other people that can implement those things. So I see that evolving a little bit. But we got a really nice flow. And I think that over the last 2 years, most leaders have either figured it out or they've struggled and probably the company's not doing so well and it's on its way out. And we've had to evolve quickly and be adaptable. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is that my decision making has had to ramp up and I have to be quickly able to lean on my team for a fast decision and make a fast decision myself. Speed can fix a lot of things because we can go fast in one direction. If we find out it's not the right direction, we can always pivot. And how fast we do that determines how long the problem lasts. And when we can pivot quickly, there's a lot of value in that because we don't always have to get it right the first time, but we can fast enough to understand that this isn't the right approach and go do something else.
I've run my business with the same kind of principle of just moving fast, getting feedback, not even worrying about, is it the right path? Now, there's times where we take that really methodical approach to making a big decision because it's maybe hard to unwind, but I know moving quickly is a big part of that. Let me wrap this up with you today, Ryan. Just what else have we missed inside of this, keeping the culture in a remote work environment?
I think the mental side gets lost in the shuffle. In being able to have a conversation with an employee from a leadership standpoint where working from home or remote may not be serving them. Not everybody functions well alone, and we need to have a heightened sense of awareness around that. We're very intentional with our team. I set 5-minute meetings with my team every month. One-on-one, I'm at least having one conversation for 5 minutes every month with each employee that's got nothing to do with work. So it's, how's life going? How's your family? How are your kids? How's your spouse? What could we be doing better to serve you? What do you need that we're not providing that we could provide? And what we found is that there's a lot of employees that thought they would love remote work and they don't anymore. They need people, they need that social interaction. So, are we supplementing them being able to get their own office in a co-working space where they can be around people? We've opened our office back up where we allow employees to come in and work out of that space if they choose to. We've got to be aware of the mental side and how to tap into just the personal side. It is the family. And I think we have a responsibility as leaders to be able to know our teams and then put people in the right place too that can be having those conversations and having a safe outlet. We're very intentional about discussing the goals that our employees have for their life. As a social media company, the majority of our team is under 25. A lot of times this is the first job that they have out of college or even straight out of high school, where they haven't experienced a work environment at this level before. So coaching them and training them and helping them set goals and go after bigger things in life. Like, we know that this isn't going to be a forever job for them, but if we can allow this to be a platform where they can go on to the next thing and it serve them better, then that's exactly what we need to do. We have a responsibility as leaders for when people leave our company, they're better than when they came in. And that's the whole person, mind, body, spirit, the whole thing, not just what they're doing on a daily basis. So tapping into and understanding what makes your team tick, the same way that I would tap into a client from a sales perspective, I need to be tapping into my team and understand their values. Like, as leaders, we really serve two clients. We serve our team as a client, and then we serve those clients that are paying us to do our job. So I think that responsibility is huge.
Well said, Ryan. Thank you for being here on the podcast, opening up the way you keep culture the way you want to in a remote work environment. Really appreciate your wisdom.
Thank you, Gene. I really appreciate being on.
Wow, what a great episode. I really love how Ryan explained to us how he meets and how often he meets and what they do inside some of these meetings to create a place where culture is strong, even in a remote work environment. I know a lot of us have tried to figure out what's missing. One of the things he said at the end, I think is something we need to put a spotlight on, is checking in with people at a personal level, checking in with their mental capacity for what we're doing here. Because a lot of people are afraid to talk about it. And if you don't have a close enough relationship, they'll try to hide it from you and you won't find out until much later. And it's hard to correct it down the road. So I just wanted to put a spotlight on that for a moment, because I think it's a really incredible way that Ryan is connecting with his people, even if it's only 5 minutes a month, having those one-on-one conversations. It's got to be really impactful. So my job is to help you be the best leader you can be. All you have to do is go to my website, genehammett.com, schedule a call. We will have a chat that you've never had before. I will give you some insight around this. I've been coaching for over a decade now, and I'd love to help you figure out what's missing, whether it's in your personal mindset and the strategies and energy sets that are going on inside your world, or do you need to develop your team a little bit better? Just go to genehammett.com and schedule a call, and let's chat about it. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, the courage. We'll see you next time.